Welcome to Apollo 8 Revisited. My name is Art, and today is December 21st, 2012. December 21st, 2012 will forever be the day that the world ended. About 50 or even 100 years from now, people will look back at this day with a little bit of hindsight smug, I believe. Maybe even with a sense of pride that mankind has survived as long as we have. However, 44 years ago today, we weren't so sure. With the Vietnam War, the Tet Offensive, the high casualty toll, the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the riots afterwards, comedian Jon Stewart once told a story of him being a child on that day, in that school, under his desk, playing and eating, I guess, a make-up lunch, not knowing about the violence going on outside after the assassination. I mean, it was so bad that Robert Kennedy, a presidential candidate during this election year, pleaded with angry Americans to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. That was followed by the death of Andy Warhol, a 7-day standoff at Columbia University, a bloody Monday in France, and then the strikes, and of course, as if it seems the fate of all those who would fight for peace, Robert Kennedy was also assassinated. And that was just the first 6 months of 1968. So, alright, the date is December 21st, 1968. Barack Obama, my friends, is 7 years old, and I don't exist yet. We are looking at the Saturn V rocket mounted onto the launch pad, ready to go. At 363 feet high, it's not only designed to escape the gravitational pull of Earth, it is the powerhouse of the NASA program. I mean, look at this thing. Go ahead and give you a little bit of a overview here. So these are basically, we've got the lower part here is the first stage of the Saturn V rocket. The second part after that is the stage 2.
Station Houston on the big loop for Ron or Roberto for Glacier transfer typo in step 4.
Okay. And stage 3 is, of course, the third part right there. Now there's a spot right there, and that is basically where the lunar module would be when the later missions continue on. This one actually does not have a lunar module. I'll explain that later. Now, if you look at the area on top of that, that is called the Command Service Module, and that would be the engine that will, hopefully take us back to Earth, and also park us into a lunar orbit. On top of that, under all of that other stuff, is the command module, and that is where 3 astronauts sit. On top of that is a little tower that they'll jettison later. So the story is basically, after Kennedy, not Robert, but his brother John F. Kennedy, decided to send men to the moon, 2 years, that was, what had happened was we had started trying to go to the moon. And
thanks, Dan. It's been a pleasure working with Orbit 2 as well. You guys did a great job for us, and we really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
2 years earlier, the crew of AS-204, the first scheduled manned flight of the Saturn 1B rocket, was lost when a spark in the cabin ignited a fire in the pure oxygen atmosphere during a test. all 3 astronauts were killed immediately. The last transmission and agonizing were burning up. With Congress demanding answers. Now that happened on top area right there. If I can get a little closer. Unfortunately, it doesn't really help. But basically, it's that top area. Now, if you also notice, it's kind of whitish like the rest of the rocket, except for the service module. That is actually a film that is supposed to collect the heat as it goes up into the atmosphere, and it's supposed to break away. And so when it breaks away, it leaves like a shiny finish that you'll see later on. Alright, so we'll be launching at 12:51. Okay?
Are you okay? Yep, just taking a different path.
Now, with Congress demanding answers about the Apollo, or the Apollo death, the Apollo 1 death, the entire mission was almost canned. The ill-fated attempt was later renamed Apollo 1. 2 years later, they were ready to try again. And that is what we're doing here. See that right there?
Go ahead for RTA on.
I'm ready to open the MV1.
At this moment, the tower arms are separating from the craft.
Thanks.
On the top right there, the one I'm kind of centering on, is that little white tarped area. It's called the White Room. The same one used in this mission would be used in the Apollo 11 missions. In fact, here's me in the actual White Room now on display at the Cosmosphere in Kansas.
We're going to put the priority power down for B in work.
Alright, here we go. Liftoff time. There goes the rest of the arms. And we have liftoff of the Saturn V rocket with the Apollo 8 crew. Alright. So, on September 21st, 1968, the Soviet Union successfully sent living animals around the moon and back. Though it fatally crash-landed back on Earth, they soon began training cosmonauts to do the same thing, minus the crashing parts. Let's go ahead and change angles. There we go. So, there we go. Even better. There we go. Make sure we kind of stay on. There we go. Now, the Apollo 8 mission was originally supposed to be a medium Earth orbit mission, but because the lunar module wasn't ready, and also because of added pressure from the Soviets, by the way, that sound that you just heard means that the spacecraft has just passed the sound barrier, meaning it's going faster than the speed of sound, and we will no longer be hearing it. But because of added pressure from the Soviets, it was later changed into a lunar orbit flight, though the new plan was not made public until November 1968. Now, the bottom of the rocket, what you see here, is we have 5 F1 engines right there. Each one as powerful as one Saturn I rocket. At liftoff, the rocket eats up about 3 tons of liquid oxygen and rocket propellant every second for 2.5 minutes. It packs about 7 million pounds of thrust before the first stage separates from the rocket, making the spacecraft lighter and thus needing less fuel to propel it into a parked Earth orbit. There'll be separation soon, by the way. So at an altitude about 220 feet, the second stage will take over, and this will bring the spacecraft speed to about 4 miles a second, followed by the third. Now the top area above the rocket right here contains the area that'll hold the lunar module. Oh, there's separation. In fact, what we'll do is show you a little bit of what's going on here. Woo! And look at that. Look at the rest of that go. Alright. There goes the rest of that. And there goes the tower. Let's watch the tower go by us. See, it jettisons, it goes as far up as it possibly can, and then it starts coming right back. Doesn't hit us. Bye-bye. And now this thing is looking very phallic. So anyways, as I said, the area between the rockets and the module is area where the lunar module will be, as well as the command module and the service module. In the command module, ready for liftoff, right? Well, ready for liftoff. We'll lift it off already. Are 3 human beings. Their names are Commander Frank Borman, Command Module Pilot James Lovell, and Lunar Module Pilot William Anders. And they have just lifted off of Earth. Now, the mission as a whole sounds simple when rolled off the tongue. Round about the moon and back. If only it were that simple. First, they've got to reach Earth orbit, which they haven't yet. Soon afterwards, they would need to successfully complete a translunar injection, or TLI. During this trip, they'll complete some mid-course corrections and live broadcasts. Once they get close to the moon, they'll perform a retro burn and slow the ship down enough to where the moon's gravity will pick it up. They would then orbit the moon about 10 times, relaying as much information and taking as many pictures as possible. Then they would fire the engines one more time before performing a trans-Earth injection, or TEI, which would then take them back home in time for New Year's. So, as I had said earlier, the command module is now metallic looking. It kind of looks a little more, well, not necessarily like the service module, but it's looking a little more similar. See how much fuel we have. Okay, we still have a little ways to go in the fuel department. Now, as what you just saw was basically the liftoff. Charles Lindbergh was among the visitors who met with the astronauts before the flights, and with the family of Jim Lovell later watched the launch. Apollo 8 had become a scouting mission for the one that would soon land the first man on the world that it's headed towards. A world that had seemed so far away yet is so close. With the mythos of the moon as it is, it's only natural that we were going to end up trying to go. That is in our nature. All throughout time, it's been there. All throughout our time, it's been there. And, you know, all throughout time, people have made stories and myths about the story behind the moon. From ancient Egypt to the Greeks, the Romans, the Chinese. What's up with the pogo oscillation here? Okay, we are back in business. Okay. For some reason it's doing a pogo oscillation. I'm gonna have to keep an eye on it because otherwise I might be in trouble. Anyways, so the reasoning for the time and date of the launch actually had nothing to do with Christmas. It was determined by the moon's lighting conditions over the areas that they wished to survey. That's it. Now, before the separation, well, actually before liftoff, actually at liftoff, the spacecraft weighed about 6 million pounds, which is how much a Navy destroyer weighs. That is large. So, there should be another separation coming up pretty soon. Yes, sir, there is another separation coming up pretty soon. This will be the end of the second stage, and the third stage will then take over and ultimately park us into Earth orbit. Now, I know, this is already long. I understand that. Keep in mind, this mission lasted about 7 days. It started November 21st, and it ends November 27th. So that's about 6 days. So we are almost out of fuel. Once this thing is out of fuel, it should separate. Once it separates, we will then move on. We will have parked into Earth orbit. Almost. There you go. Separation now. Bink. All right. Excellent. All right. Now, we still have some time. Now, if you look at the timer, it says it's about 9 minutes and 41 seconds into launch. At about 11 minutes and 24 seconds into launch, I will cut off the engines. By the way, engines are when I start an engine, it's called a burn. Just to let you know, when I start an engine that's supposed to go backward, or it's supposed to slow the ship down, that's called a retro burn. A retro burn is what we're going to be using to park ourselves in the moon's atmosphere. However, at this point, we are going to we're focused on EOI, which is Earth Orbit Insertion. So, just to give you a little bit of a scale of how much we've gone in our little trip here, we are no longer near the East Coast. We are far away. We are probably around the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So, yeah, that is, as I said, we still got the engine cut off, and once the engine cuts off, I will go ahead and end this. I do appreciate you guys staying with me for this entire time. I understand that these will be long episodes, but I appreciate you sticking around and keeping me company as I travel to the moon and back. And I try and give you as much information about everything as possible. Alright, coming up soon. It's almost there. It's almost there. Come on, come on. We're doing good. We're doing good. There we go. Cut off time. Thanks for joining me.